Early this morning, I completed my final playthrough of Fire Emblem Three Houses. So that means I've done like Church Route, I've done Golden Deer, I have done Blue Lions. I have not done Crimson Flower because I don't give a shit about Crimson Flower. So essentially, I have like killed Edelgard like 3 times, and it is time to lay the game to rest. I have done everything there is to do in the game. There's nothing else to discover or find out about the setting or the lore. I kind of know it all. I've kind of seen it all. Uh, I'm sure there's like, lots of things to find and discover in the game for hardcore, like completionist types, right? But like for me personally, I think the game is kind of like, I don't want to say overstayed its welcome because, I put 3 full playthroughs into it. But it's like, it's one of those things where like, this is something that's like, I'm really ready to move on from. I think I've gotten all the mileage I can get out of this one. I'm not really interested in returning to it. And this is kind of where I'm at now, is that like kind of my final thoughts on Three Houses. And it is one of my favorite RPGs on Switch, on Nintendo Switch. I do like Dragon Quest XI better, but Xenoblade Chronicles 3 not as much. But like, for Fire Emblem Three Houses, like right from the get-go, I pointed this out, like how weirdly disjointed this game is. Because allegedly it's some weird like Harry Potter inspired knockoff thing where like you're the new professor at this like magic academy where people learn to be Fire Emblem characters, right? It very clearly set up this idea that it was like Harry Potter, and then it segues into like Game of Thrones style bullshit where everyone is like evil, insane, or both. And like you, the protagonist, like basically win the war by yourself by being such a Mary Sue. It's like it's embarrassing in a lot of ways how bad Byleth is as a protagonist, because the entire war is decided on whether or not Byleth sides with a particular side. And like, I've when I first played this, I got the I really liked Byleth more than Corrin, because with Corrin, like Corrin was really frustrating in that sense where like Corrin was like a massive moral fag and did this thing where like he comes out and he's like, I'm gonna stop this war by not killing anybody. Like Corrin and Robin, like they have this thing where like the characters like blindly worship you and like treat you like you're awesome as long as you're not like on the other side of them, right? Like especially with Robin, it really got obnoxious with how characters would just tell you you're great and tell you how amazing you were, and it just felt fake and artificial. With like Three Houses, it felt a lot more nuanced, where like characters still like blindly loved and adored you, but eventually, depending on the route you would take, they would turn on you, and it felt like a lot more organic. But I do think like after doing full 3 playthroughs, like I've really started detesting Byleth as a character. Like I detest the whole like being the vessel of the goddess plot line. I hate the whole Geralt thing. I hate like the relationship he has with like the other characters. Like, Byleth is just some Mary Sue self-insert character who doesn't functionally work. And like I can't help but feel as if like the plot of Three Houses on all routes would be significantly better if he wasn't a character. Okay, like it makes more sense because, a Blue Lion route would actually be about Dimitri, instead of being about Byleth, interacting with Dimitri and like watching him slowly change into like the King of Fargus, right? You would have like, they would have, you would have seen like a lot more nuance out of the characters. You would have seen them interact a lot more. Like characters shine a lot more when they're interacting with each other than they are with interacting with Byleth, because Byleth is a silent protagonist. So what ends up happening during support chains with characters is basically it's basically always just them coming up to you and then telling you that like, oh yes, this is my gimmick, and like you just kind of like give the most generic answers imaginable. It's embarrassing. It does not work functionally. It doesn't feel as if like the setting is realized enough. Like, and it's so strange when you look at the game and like why people love it. Like people love the nuance. They love the political drama. They love like the implications, but like the implications of what's happening in Three Houses is radically different than like what actually happens. Like this is the weird thing about Three Houses is that the lore is like fantastic and really compelling and like leads all these possibilities of like, you know, character motivations and like history and just like political rivalries and all these like crazy different directions they can go. But like you have like the objective reality of like what actually happens in the plot on every single route, and it's always complete bullshit. You know, Claude always does whatever the fuck he wants. You know, Dimitri is like insane and completely incompetent in like any route where you're not there to rein him in. You know, Edelgard is like uh you know, a cutesy waifu when you decide to help her like conquer the entire world. Like it's like what you get is this like instead of like making it feel like you're having a positive influence on like the characters you're interacting with and like setting them down paths, like it all feels like very contrived and very forced. It doesn't feel like a natural organic story. It just feels like things kind of happen and you like move past them like very quickly. You know, in Blue Lions, like Rodrigue dies. Now, does Felix do anything? Does he bring it up at all? Like, no, he just kind of ignores it. In fact, I got a support chain where he brings up his dad after he had already died. Like, again, you notice things like that. And what you see is just like what you get is this like realization that in a lot of ways, like Three Houses is just not all that well constructed. Like, in a lot of ways, the game excels by complete accident. Like it's a fluke. Like when you look at like what Three Houses actually accomplishes narratively, like it's not really that impressive. Like you have interesting character motivations and ideas and things that could happen or things that happen off screen, and yet like it doesn't actually like contribute itself to an actual plot. And like in a way, and I really do mean this, like Engage absolutely does have a better story than Three Houses, because Engage actually has the characters growing and developing. It has you like interacting with them. It has like all of them staying relevant throughout the entire thing. You know, you have like, you know, revelations about the protagonist that make sense and change things. Okay, like the pacing is better, right? With Three Houses, like the pacing is so slow that like a second playthrough is like obnoxiously long. Okay, like Three Houses excels when it comes to like, you know, its lore, which Engage does not do. But like Engage actually like does a really good job making fun, appealing characters that like you immediately get attached to. Right, it's better in the moment in a lot of sense, and it has better strategy gameplay too. Like it's interesting because universally, I think the fans like consider Three Houses to be far superior to Engage, but like in reality, they're like polar opposites of each other and like excel at different things. Right, Engage has like better gameplay, it has better pacing, it has better character designs, but like, you know, the narrative has always been this idea that like, well, Three Houses is more real, it's more grounded. You know, it feels like it could actually happen, and that's not really true, because people have this idea that because Three Houses is more realistic, that Three Houses is darker, that makes it realistic. But like, you know, the logistics of what happens in this story makes no sense. Like realistically, would Claude be able to like dismantle the alliance and hand everything over to Dimitri? Okay, realistically, would like Edelgard be able to like, I don't know, muster up like this many Imperial forces like under the church's nose, right? Like when you look at like what happens in this plot, like a lot of it like just comes off as really, really contrived and forced. You know, the thing that I always come back to is like, you know, we were doing the Blue Lion route and we did the battle of Eagle and Lion, right? Claude's there too, and like even though we asked him for help, and even though that like we knew that like he had an interest in beating the Empire, instead what happens is that we fight Claude and Edelgard, kill a bunch of Claude's people, and it's really for no reason. It makes Claude look like a dipshit. It makes like the alliance's involvement seem completely pointless. But like the only reason this battle happens is because for narrative reasons, the creators wanted to have the three-way battle, like in all the routes, right? And it just fundamentally does not work. It fundamentally just feels in most routes to be like just completely asinine and just make no sense. You kind of have to like fill in the blanks as to what happened in a lot of cases. Like in the Blue Lions route, they try and tell you that like, oh yeah, our messenger didn't reach Claude and that's why he's fighting us. Like it's like what? That doesn't make any sense. And then he has the gall a couple of chapters later to like request aid, and you like immediately give it to him as if like he didn't make everything like more difficult at Grondor. Like in theory, if Claude wasn't being such a bitch, like they could have killed Edelgard right there. But like no, the game has to drag out for like 4 extra chapters. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. So it's really interesting, like looking at this game and its like legacy, because in a lot of ways, I'm a huge fan of Three Houses. Okay, I put like 80 hours into the game. It's one of my most played games on Nintendo Switch. It's like something that I'm sure I'll come back to for like future playthroughs. There's all these things to love about it, but at the same time, it is indeed deeply flawed. And I feel like in a lot of ways, like the fans aren't really willing to accept the deep flaws. Like in a lot of ways, like fans have this mindset that like this is like the ideal Fire Emblem game, and I just feel like that's not the case. Like I've never felt it was better than Awakening or Path of Radiance. So like because of all these problems, and I feel as if like the masses like just venerated this game and don't really like understand like how much of a miracle it is that this game came out as competently as it did. Like again, it's a game with a ton of issues, like with the writing and the structure, the pacing. Like there's so many things you can talk about with Three Houses, but like at the end of the day, you end up really, really enjoying it regardless, in spite of everything. And I do think that's very important to acknowledge that, like, yeah, we do indeed enjoy this game for what it did. But at the same time, like, coming back to it so many times, like, you can't help but notice all the real flaws. And I can't help but be concerned that a lot of people aren't addressing the fact that these flaws are serious and could negatively impact future Fire Emblem games.